You're listening to the Studyclix podcast, your number one source for junior cycle and Leaving Cert tips. We make exams easier. Welcome back to another episode of the Studyclix podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Erin.
And today we are going to be sharing some tips for Leaving Cert Irish. Dun, 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 the most treacherous of Leaving Cert subjects, although it's, our beautiful language and
Indeed.
something we all should be better at. But today we're going to tell you how to be better at it, aren't we, Erin?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, Erin actually got a H1. I got a H something. I did great. Actually did. I know I'm acting like I did terribly. But it wasn't. It
Andy
wasn't a
failed.
H1. I was actually kicked out of my exam midway through for cheating. I was making a TikTok.
Don't be like him. Don't listen to a word he says. Jokes.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to kind of approach this at looking at like what is the best way to study Irish, because I found it hard when I was in Leaving Cert to actually know what to be studying some of the time. Obviously, there's a lot of practical and theory and stuff you need to learn for like strat pictures and ashtas. Some people try to learn off essays and things. So there's all that kind of route of going down it. But in general, how do you improve your overall standard and level in a language is kind of is this tough thing to get your head around. So I guess today we're going to kind of be touching on that and touching on the exam and where kind of your marks go and stuff and where you can put your time and effort in. But I guess if you were starting at the start of sixth year, I mean, we might have fifth years listening to this as well, but let's pretend you're in sixth year and you've done a year already. And we're now like a month and a half into the new school year.
The
My
dreaded
goodness,
year.
time flies. Yeah. As Erin is a H1 student, but I'm also going to tell you about my own experience. But what would you? Obviously, the first thing that comes first is the oral. 40% of the grade, isn't it?
Yeah,
which
it's
is
the
a huge number.
Singular part of like the exam that you're going to do throughout the year. Like there's more to be acquired in the oral than in any of the two papers.
Mm-hmm. So would you, because I guess maybe that's something people think about, because I kind of left the oral, I didn't think about the oral really until maybe after Christmas. I mean, obviously it depends on your school and the way your teacher works, but we started on strat pictures and stuff in fifth year and learning those, but I guess for the actual co-oral and all that, I wasn't doing too much work on that until after Christmas. Is that something that you would have looked at before Christmas, or sort of chipped away at that in the background, or were you looking at more kind of the papers before? Where did you kind of start studying?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a really good idea to familiarize yourself with what the breakdown of the marks in the oral itself. So the oral altogether is worth 240 marks, and the
Yeah.
biggest part of your oral is the co-oral. So actually, yeah, I would definitely work on building that. I think it's something as well that if you start working on kind of, if it's one of the earliest things that you kind of prioritize and then just build on it gradually throughout the year, it'll actually stand to you more than if you try and like learn loads of sharp pictures off by heart at like the end of fifth year or something.
Yeah.
Because if you can kind of get yourself to a point that talking about those topics is more natural for you, that's going to benefit you in the exam. Like there's no point. I mean, I know people for the core like learn off these big spiels of information about their school or whatever the case may be, and like that's grand.
Mm-hmm.
And once the Irish is correct, more power to you, like whatever works for you. But if you can have it in such a way that you can just kind of bounce conversation back and forth between yourself and the examiner and have it as natural as possible while also feeling confident in your own Irish, like you will feel so much better about it and you will end up doing better in the long run. So I would definitely say, as soon as you can, like start practicing speaking Irish. I mean, like, whether it's to your friends, to your family, or like
Mm-hmm.
even to yourself, just kind of like talking away, when you're doing something, like even record yourself talking. I find that's something that used to help me a lot. Like I just kind of like
Okay.
start a voice note and then like I don't know, like just talk for as long as I could about a certain topic and see
Mm-hmm.
how much I could get out, and then I'd listen back to it, and if there was any sort of, I don't know, grammar mistakes or anything that I picked up, I'd work on correcting that then. Or I mean, you could even, or organize things like that with your teacher. Like if you wanted, I don't know, sending things to them to correct, or organizing mock orals. I know a lot of teachers do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
From kind of early sixth year, even like late fifth year. Like I know myself, I had to do like a mock oral for my fifth year, end of year exams. So, it completely depends on your teacher and what way, things work like that. But for yourself, yeah, I definitely think the Cora is one of the things I'd be prioritizing earliest in the year, to be honest.
Okay.
Obviously with things like the Shrap Pictor, I would start practicing those as soon as possible too. But I think with any part of the Irish exam, to be honest, it's a bit of a risk trying to learn off so many things off by heart,
Hmm.
because I know loads of people do that, and to be honest, I'm not gonna lie and act like I didn't do it myself. It's handy enough to just have like a spiel learned off for a certain topic or whatever, and then like be able
Yeah.
to recite that when the time comes. But I think like, I mean, if you can have your verbs right, your keywords right, and can just kind of build
Hmm.
conversation around what's happening in each picture, that will stand to you a lot more. And I feel like as well, when I was in sixth year, I only had to do the 10 sharp pictors, whereas now it's gone back up to 20. And so I
Yeah.
think if you have so many different like stories to learn off, and just to be asked one in the actual exam, I really don't think it's worth your time. I don't think it's worth your time learning off so many like different like spiels for each one. I think, you only have to do one of them if you want. I know there's a lot of them that are kind of similar. Like there's a good few that are kind of about like sports or like going to the doctor or like some trip or whatever. Like there's a lot of things that kind of overlap. There's a lot of similar vocab and similar phrases that you can have in each one.
Yeah.
So I think just build up a bank of like keywords, good phrases,
Hmm.
and just practice them,
Hmm.
and again get them as natural as possible. And I mean, if you can start doing that earlier in the year, great. But I would say, yeah, I think you know you have to be smart with how you approach it, because like, I mean, there's so many subjects I think outside of Irish where, you do just have to learn off loads of information. You don't really have a choice. Like, I mean, the likes of like sciences or,
History and yeah,
yeah, like
history, geography. Yeah.
you have to learn those facts. You have to spend time going over those things and getting them into your head.
Yeah.
There's no point, I mean, I don't think anyway, there's no point like filling your head with like these massive, really long paragraphs when you can actually make your life easier if you just practice and kind of get into a better groove with it and feel more confident yourself. Because if you like, for things like the Sharp Pictors and stuff, and like even the Cora, you don't have to be coming out with this like really high level of Irish. Like it doesn't have to be like to
Yeah.
a really high standard. It doesn't have to be complicated. You're having a conversation with the examiner, especially for the Cora.
Hmm.
Like you're literally just chatting away. It's like if I went to you and said, Andy, tell me about your pastimes, you're not going to be like, well, as a matter of fact, I love to like, it's not going to be really like fancy language. I mean, and if you could throw
Yeah.
things like that in, brilliant. Like if you can show off, I know how to say this in Irish, I can
Hmm.
impress you with, throwing in these phrases or whatever. I mean, great. But like the main
Hmm.
thing is just that you can have a comfortable conversation with another Irish speaker. So that's honestly the main thing. And I think like, it's 120 marks altogether. That's half of your oral. That's 20% of your entire grade in the subject.
Hmm.
So I think it's definitely one of the most important things to start kind of building from day one.
Yeah, that's huge, really. And I guess a lot of it, um, as you say, if you're working on that co-role, working away of it before Christmas and the whole time, a lot of it does like so much crosses over. Everything crosses over in Irish. So if you're
Exactly.
working on those phrases and stuff, and if your general level of Irish in your tenses and your verbs and all that is good, that's going to help you in your essay and
Mhm.
your life history and all
Exactly.
these different
Yeah.
things. Yeah, exactly.
And, so many as well of the I know people get a bit scared at, like, the prospect of being asked, like, kind of more current affairs topics in their oral.
Uh huh.
Like, people will
Yeah,
prepare things, like, for, I don't know, like, climate change or, like, what else? Like, I mean, like,
politics and
the
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
politics, things like that. And, like, that's obviously daunting. And, I mean, the likelihood of being asked something like that, like, it depends on the examiner, but, like, honestly, like, they are just trying to have a normal conversation most of the time.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't stress like that too much. First of all, like, you don't have to answer any given question. Like, if you can tell the examiner, like, sorry, I'm just not very educated about this topic, I'd rather talk about something else, or like redirect the
Yeah.
conversation yourself. You have the power to do that. You can control it. Like, if you said to me, Andy, like, oh, what do you think about like the current state of the economy in the country? Like, I probably couldn't just recite a load of facts at you right now. Like, and that's okay. You're not going to be like, how dare you not answer my question? Like,
Doc
you can
Marks.
just
Yeah.
You can just redirect it, and that's so fine.
Mhm.
But also,
Well,
if
that's a
it is a
skill in
case.
itself, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But, like, you need to remember, like, you have the control there. You can go whatever way you want with it, and that's completely okay. The examiner is not gonna penalize you for that. But if it is a case that you do have topics like that prepared and you do have notes to go off, that can all be rehashed again in your Ashta. If there's,
Yeah.
a question comes up about, like, I don't know, like, problems in the world, like, there's, like, a lot of really kind of vague ones like that that come up. You can talk about the exact same things you talked about in your oral, like, it's the exact same content. Once you are familiar with the terminology and things like that, that can all be repurposed. So,
Mhm.
nothing that you learn really in Irish is kind of standalone. Like, a lot of it can be applied if you go about it in a way that is, like, sustainable is probably the wrong word, but in a way that's like useful and um kind of
Efficient,
making the
yeah.
most out of your
Got it.
study. Yeah. Like, that will all stand to you, and you can use all of it again. And, like, even things like the Leaving, like, the same sort of words can pop up again and again that,
Yeah.
if you get them into your head and you're familiar with them, like, that will stand to you. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's definitely just a matter of, like, becoming comfortable with the language and also familiarizing yourself with key terms and things like that, just so for the sake of understanding more than anything. Because, like, if you can pick up on the fact that an examiner wants you to talk about a certain thing, like, that's kind of as much as you need, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that co-role is basically worth mo as you're saying, is worth more than the ESTA, so why
Mhm.
wouldn't you start working on that? I guess, and these are things that, like, again, we're here to tell you, because I think when I was in Leaving Cert, I didn't quite know, or I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been too bothered about looking at the breakdown of the exams and where your marks are going and stuff, but if I'd looked at that properly and I'd realized that the actual co-role was worth more than my ESTA, I would have started working on that just as early
Yeah.
straight away, because then, as we're saying, all these things cross over, and if you feel like, "Okay, I'm just gonna study on the oral," it's never like all of that's improving your general level of Irish. So, I mean, it's
It's so
get
hard
going
to
on it straight
realize
away,
time, and I mean, you have so much going on at Leaving Cert. Like, you're just focused on studying and, like, getting as much learned as you can.
day to day.
But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, exactly. But, like, it's when you actually, like, take a step back and break down what you have to do and what it's such a part of studying in itself, like, familiarizing yourself with the layout of the exam, and it's such a useful tool to know exactly what is required of you. I also think it's really worth noting that, like you were saying, a lot of people are focused with just, like, getting material covered and things. So for Irish, they'll just think, "Oh, like, I need to learn off about the poems and the
Mhm.
stories and things like that." Fun fact, the poetry that you have to do in the oral exam, which is just reciting a poem, like, you can literally bring in your own version of it and read it off and, like, have any sort of, like, phonetics written out or, like, help
Written on
like,
it. Yeah.
tips to help you for the exam. You can
Yeah.
literally bring that in with you yourself, practice it as much as you want, just read it out for the examiner. That's worth 35 marks, whereas the poetry question in paper 2 is only worth 30 marks, and people spend so long studying for that and writing out different answers and everything, and, like, great, but you can pick up more marks if you just practice reading out the poem over and over again, and I feel like that's something so many people don't realize. Like, the marks aren't worth less in the oral or anything. Like, this is literally, like, it's
Yeah.
the same value. Like, yeah, it's 35 marks versus 30 marks. So if you just put time into that question and, yeah, like, I think it's just something so many people aren't aware of, is how much of an emphasis there is actually placed on the oral and how much it can help you through the exam.
Yeah, that's crazy for the amount of writing you do. I remember studying
Yeah.
loads for that filioque
Mhm.
question and worrying about it so much, and,
Yeah.
I think for that reading that poem, I might have read it, like, literally 3 times. But, like, and we were saying, because that's a tough one to kinda study for and prepare for, I guess. Well, I mean, you can read it as many times as you want, but you really need that feedback. And
Mhm.
maybe depending on your teacher, you might not get the opportunity to do that. But we were kind of talking about it earlier. Something of recording yourself reading it, or there's lots of people on YouTube and on
Mm.
Studyclix of reading
Yeah.
these poems, and like that you can find how these things are pronounced, or read it yourself, send it into your teacher, say, what am I doing wrong here? Where can I pick up a few extra marks? Because this is literally worth more than, as you said, the written question. So these are all things that are worthwhile.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so handy to just, I mean, even if you're, I don't know, on a walk or something, like, you can just be
Hmm.
listening to them over and over again. Like, it's like, I don't know, learning a song or something. Like, it's just
Yeah.
practicing it, getting the kind of, little details of it right, like the little things that you might be tripping up on. And then once you just, yeah, just recite it, like, alongside. There is recordings on the Studyclix YouTube channel, if I'm not mistaken, of people just reading through the poems.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
practice with those, and yeah, you'll, like, get so used to it in no time, and that's an easy 35 marks you can have secured by, like, 2 minutes into your oral.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the kind of message there is don't neglect the oral till after Christmas, like someone in this podcast did, and probably lost marks in it. But
But
so yeah, get
loads of
on that
people
straight
do.
away. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it. I suppose identifying that is that the marks that are there and are there to be taken easily and get going on that as soon as possible. If you've listened to this, well done, and you realize that now you're ahead of the posse. So congratulations. Wasn't a waste of your time. Your friends were making fun of you to listening to the Studyclix podcast, but here you
Yeah,
are ahead of the game.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I guess touching on the written exam. We've talked about learning things off and your kind of opinion on that. And I would have been someone as well who learned a lot of things off. And for the ASHTA, I think I learned a whole. I think I learned like two essays. I think I learned one on Fibin and Yoga, and then one on something to do with the state of the Irish language. And
Mm,
kind of hoped that one of them would come up, and luckily it did. And I was able to I'm quite good at remembering things, so I was able to rattle it off, and like it didn't actually take me too much time to learn it. But yeah, what's your kind of opinion? I mean, you've touched on it there, but I guess going into it more for the essay and then having a look at the at paper two, just Leif Hishkins and stuff, because I know a lot of the time it's actually easier to get marks on that as well than you think, and there are
yeah,
little tips and tricks of kind of even just underlining things or taking things straight out of the text and not having to reword things. People try and get too fancy with that sometimes. What are
yeah.
your kind of
Mm.
tips for those written exams?
The essay is worth 100 marks altogether. Um,
Mhm.
so that's like roughly 16% of your total grade. And I think that, like you said, a lot of people are accustomed to just learning off, an entire essay and hoping that it comes up. That's
Mhm.
probably not the safest option. Like, I mean, you could get lucky, and I know there's predictions each year, and there's certain things you can kind of like you were saying, like things like Fibonacci and Ninoga, like that kind of thing comes up like pretty much every year. There's some sort of question, like, problems in the world, like a lot of the time. Now, this isn't
Mhm.
me saying like don't like, get you can just learn that and you'll be fine. No. But
Yeah.
it's fair enough to assume that like if you learn off certain things or like certain things that maybe came up last year, if you don't look at those, like yeah, fair enough, you can kind of predict things a little bit. But I think it's so much better to there's so many phrases with the essay that can be sort of generic that you can learn off that would fit like pretty much everything. I think again, it's most important to focus on like your key terms, your like I think rather than learning off an essay itself, what I like to do when it came to writing essays was to learn off plans for essays or like bullet points that I would want to talk
Yeah.
about in each paragraph. Because I think
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
and that's obviously something that comes with, like, improving every sort of aspect of your Irish. Like, of course, if you aren't super confident, you're gonna want to learn it all off so you can, maximize your chances of doing better. But I think, like, it's just a lot less of a workload on yourself if you're able to just come up with a plan and then expand on that. So what I would recommend doing is having a bank of, like, different, like, phrases. So things like "Náithna Cainte," "Seanachal," that you can put in where it makes sense to. So I would match different Seanachal to different like topics. So let me think, for example. Like I mean if you're doing one like Dini Oga, for example, you can have
Mhm.
things like Mulla Noige agus Chucky or like there's another one as well. You can kind of match certain phrases to certain topics that or like certain ones that like would apply to pretty much everything and then
Mhm.
just have them to throw in to be like, "Yes, I know this cool phrase." But then also I think it's important to be aware of your format. So you do actually get marks in your essay for the style of how you kind of format it. So, um,
Yeah.
what I would recommend doing is having like a strong opening. So, open it with like some phrase that's gonna like catch your examiner's attention, being like, oh, like,
Mhm.
there's so much talk in the news about this topic and like, just something kind of fancy like that to draw you in. Just have a paragraph. And I love to end it with like a question as well. So be like, but how is this I don't know, like, just make it, like, make it interesting, like, there's no point just,
Yeah.
like, rattling off loads of information, and then you,
Mhm.
have, like keep, like, 1 point per paragraph, so have, like, your first point, and then a second point, and I like, usually, like, around 3 or whatever, like, depending on what the topic may be. Then I really liked, when I did my essays to have, like, a sort of a solution paragraph, like, obviously, this would depend on what
Okay. Yeah.
the topic was, but as in if we were talking
Mhm.
about something like, I don't know, the cost of living, like, and it can be so basic, but I just really liked it because it was such a good excuse to just throw in the muckanilach with the conditional tense,
Mm.
which, you know, would it really boost your language grade. So I would literally have something like is there any way we can solve this problem? If I was a TD in the government, I would do
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, and like that can be kind of learned off for like pretty much everything. Like, I mean, you can just say something like, "Oh, I would put more supports in place for whatever," and like it just
Yeah.
shows that you have that command of the language, and then have a strong ending as well, a conclusion. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think like being aware of your sort of format, and there's, like I said, phrases that you can have learned off, like in your, to have in your back pocket that would fit like pretty much every essay once you lay it out in this way. It's really important that that you're showing off in this essay. Like, this is your chance to show off, I have a good standard of Irish, even if you like don't and you're not comfortable with your language at all. Like, there's like, I think it's 15 marks out of the 100 that are just designated for your standard of Irish. So if you can, practice your tenses, throw in phrases that like make your Irish seem like it's of a very high standard, all of that
Mhm.
is going to make you do better in the long run. But I think the majority or the main thing is just to practice. Like I said, it's the same with the Cora, like just practicing getting used to using your Irish in that sense, like in a more general sort of way. And then like you'll build up that like comfort with it to be able to, like I said, just kind of, be able to do out a plan and then like just write, you know. There's such a format to doing the essays, that
Yeah.
if you keep practicing them, you'll
Mhm.
feel a lot better about when you do actually have to write one in the exam.
Absolutely, and it's a hard thing to practice for, isn't it? Is it something that
Oh,
you would
yeah.
have do you, like I'm trying to think about my own experience. I'm trying to think, did I sit down and actually write essays? Like, was that something you would do?
Yeah, I mean, like, I know my teacher would assign us a lot of them, so, like, for homework or whatever, so,
Okay.
like, I just kinda do a lot of them,
That's true, yeah, I had that as well, actually, yeah.
myself. Or, like, like, there's, like, I think 5, essay topics that come up each year. So, like,
Yeah,
we'd be assigned a paper and, he'd be like, "Okay, pick one of these and write one and then correct them and give us feedback on that." But that was really good
yeah,
practice because if you don't, and also, like, the good thing about the essays is you can afford to take your time with them.
mhm,
You have, I wanna say, you have over an hour to write the essay itself, so it's not like English where you're trying to whip out, like, a five-page essay in, like, 10 minutes. Um, so you can afford to take your time with it and make sure that, like, your grammar and everything is correct, and, like, make a good solid plan because, once you have things that you can follow, you're not gonna be like, "Okay, what do I talk about next?" Like, you'd actually be surprised with how much a plan can help you when you're writing it. Um,
mm,
but yeah, I think definitely if you just get into the habit of practicing writing them out, or at least practicing how you would plan an essay out, like, you will have so many more options come the actual exam time. And,
yeah.
I think a lot of the time as well, people tend to panic when they see questions come up on the paper, like, if they aren't phrased in the exact way that they
That's
may
it,
have
yeah, that's a
thought.
big one. I think a lot of people, because I remember I was thinking, or I'd get scared. That was something that for a lot of the different questions, especially in the poetry or the lay fish, like, I wouldn't understand what it was asking me, and that was like
Yeah.
a how do you kinda get
Mhm.
around that? I suppose it's looking for keywords and looking at the way they've been phrased in the past and finding just kinda ways that they've phrased it so you kind of understand to an extent what you're being asked. Because it's like
Yeah,
that's a horrible thing to think you're being asked something and answer a whole question on it and then find out a few months later that you
exactly.
actually weren't at.
Yeah. And that happens so often, but, like, just
Yeah.
understanding the question is honestly half the battle. So I did my Leaving Cert in 2024, and the questions that come up were, the power of social media, which a lot of people learn things like technology or, like, the
Mhm.
media, and I mean, you'd kind of identify that from just knowing socialta, but, like, things can be phrased kinda differently to how you might expect. And then the next one was, "An bhfuil síl ag gatainine is sucky an léinne," which is, does everybody in today's society have a good life, which is so open, like, you can literally talk about whatever you want with
Mhm.
that. Then you had Éireags Cuasaí Idirnáisiúnta, which is Ireland and international affairs, which again, I mean, like, depending on what you had learned off, there's so many ways you can go with that. Then there is,
Yeah.
the pleasure and heartbreak that comes with sport, and then life in the countryside, how it is and how it will be. So you have, I mean, the first 3 there
Right.
anyway. The
Who's
first 3,
answering those 2? So
yeah, I mean, if you're into sport, like, great,
the sport,
but,
actually, you could, yeah, but the countryside's a bit of a weird one.
a little bit, but the first 3, like, pretty open questions, and I think,
Mhm.
like, you know like the thing about like, does everyone in today's society have a good life? You might get really thrown off if you see a question like that because it's literally just like the problems of people in today's society, which you might have something learned off
Mhm.
like problems of young people, which you could so I mean like, I don't know what you talk about in that essay, like, I mean, like, the cost of living, like, education, like, I don't know, like, loads of different things. You can bring all of that into a question that's, like, sort of more open like that, so if you just, don't panic is the thing that I would say most of all when you open your paper, because you're more than likely more than capable of writing, like, multiple of the essay titles, and you just might throw yourself off because it's not worded exactly how you might expect.
Yeah. Yeah, it can very much you need to just kinda take a second and breathe and go, "Okay,
Yeah,
this isn't look what I thought it would look like, but what under words do I understand here?" And then slowly you can actually kind of, paint a picture for yourself instead of just going,
exactly.
"Oh my goodness, that's not what I was expecting to see," because it can be pretty scary. Ashta, very interesting. What kind of you're talking about phrases, and phrases were a huge thing for me. I remember I got like, because I used to use A4 refill pads all the time for my study, me ripping pages out and putting them in different plastic pocket folders and stuff. But I
Yeah.
remember I had like at least two or like a double sided that was like full of just these phrases and their translation. And I remember there was obviously some ones which I picked out and enjoyed more or could remember more easily. But like, what were big ones for you? Like, I had ones like that I could use in my co-raw and in my essays, like Cunnaveth McConta and
Yeah.
or Dort Mehiana or
Mhm.
Ganaris or Bit and all these different things, is that if you could give like 3 or 5 of your favorite ones. So someone, if they were listening and wanted to actively like write that down, or like ones that you just think can be used in loads of different contexts, like
Okay.
what are your favorites? Is that a question to
Yeah.
ask you on the spot? You're an Irish connoisseur.
No, I
I've just
know,
whipped
I
out
just,
3 there with these.
let me see. A good sort of, seanachal, I guess, to add in
Mhm.
is, I like to put this at the end of all my essays, is, there's 2 versions of it, so Neosi
Oh
an
yeah.
Aimsir or Ismahan Scéala an Aimsir, which basically just means time will tell. So it's basically
Okay.
just a way to, like, if you're like, you know, are things going to actually improve? Time will tell. And
Uh-huh.
that just kind of is a
Okay,
good
yeah.
way to round off, what you're saying because, you don't actually have to like, obviously, you're not gonna come to that conclusion. It's not your problem, but, um,
Mhm.
yeah, and then what else? I think more general things. I mean, like, there's so many, like, little, like, turns of phrases, like you said, like, "Not counted" that you can
Mhm.
put in. I think it's nice to have, like, a good, sort of line that you can put in at the start. So I'm, like, trying to think. Ní haon láthart sa lá atá inniu an nach Níontar play ar X sa nuacht or like sna I don't know, sna meán. So which basically means like not a day goes by that whatever topic isn't discussed in like the news or in like
Nice,
the
okay,
media.
yeah. Yeah.
Which can be applied to like a lot of things across the board. I love to throw that
Mhm.
one in at the start of my essays. And then
Yeah.
yeah, like things like to like really kind of affirm your points. So things like Ernoe or like Gone Hours,
Yeah.
which like of course, like, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
just to kind of make what you're saying seem a little bit more credible. But like
Or
there's
even
so
it's
many things
interesting
like that.
just they're interesting ways to just if you're starting everything with "tá" or "bhí" or just like the same
Mhm.
kinda, verbs and stuff, if you just even start a sentence like with "Mar dúirt mé chéanna" or
Yeah.
"Chuna bheith me conta" about something, it just instantly yeah, if it's someone's reading like 40 essays in a row and that just suddenly
Mhm.
comes out like, "Oh, that's just a nice bit of Irish," or I can give them a little
Exactly.
mark for that or something instead of it's just being smart about those things. And then in the same,
Yeah.
you can use those all the time in the co-roll and it just seems like you're having more of a natural conversation or just like, "Oh, this person's level of Irish is better than just tá lán á sinna im a scoil," and
Yeah.
like all this, like which, we all
Mhm.
have been guilty of doing at a time.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess we could touch on as well because Studyclix actually got a new thing, and this is not just us plugging this for the sake of plugging it, but I kind of wish this was around when I was in secondary school because I used Studyclix loads. And but we've basically got a new Leaving Cert Irish Boost, which Erin's been working away on, and it's a great new tool for kind of helping you bite-sized videos and information. Like it's kind of like grinds, but it's like a once-off
Mhm.
payment, so it's really really useful. Is there anything you could tell us about that and how kind of useful that could be?
Yeah, so Boost, I mean, we have it for other subjects like maths and biology as well, but for Irish,
Yeah.
basically, it has everything that you'd need to kind of worry about on the course right there for you. So there's detailed videos and notes going through. There's a lot about the oral. There is loads and loads of grammar videos. There is
Mhm.
for both courses. So for current sixth years, there's videos and notes going through all of the prose, poetry, and literature questions. And then the same thing for current fifth years. So with the new course, we have loads of notes and information about everything that you'd be covering through over the next 2 years. And I mean, this is a very new change to the course. So like if it's difficult to find notes and things like that like for those topics online. So I would really recommend, if you do feel you are struggling with Irish, you want a bit of extra help. Like Andy said, it's basically like grinds. I mean, and yeah, like it's a once-off payment and you just have access to
Mhm.
all of these things for the year. And yeah, it's so, so helpful. I mean, we've had so many experts contribute into this. It's all very, very useful information that can come in handy for any sort of question approach you'd want to take for like the different stories or whatever. Like it will help
Mhm.
you so much. And like I think it's important to, like what I was saying about the grammar videos, grammar is such a huge chunk of everything that you do in the subject. If you have a good foundation with your grammar, that will carry over to like anything else that you may answer on in the subject. So, if you do feel like you struggle with your grammar, these videos are so, so easy to follow. Like they're very accessible. They are broken down so, so well. And we have also like flashcards after each video. Like so you can kind of test yourself with different things to see how you're getting on with your learning. But I would really,
Mhm.
really recommend if you do feel like you would like a little bit extra help with your Irish and you don't, as maybe an alternative to grinds, I would really strongly consider Irish Boost.
Ah, here, here. Yeah, no, it's a really useful thing, and as you say, it's for maths and biology there as well. So if you
Mhm.
find that it's really helpful for Irish, have a look at it for those
Yeah.
things as well.
And if you're
Um,
listening to this podcast and you're thinking about buying Irish Boost, you can use the code podcast10 to get €10 off.
well, there you go.
So,
That's it. You've been just
what's
rewarded
stopping
for
you?
listening to us for 40 minutes or 35 minutes, however long this has been. I mean, wow. This actually be bigger. I think it's like people get to the end of this, it should be like a podcast 30 or
We're not
something
even
where
done,
people get like
like
30% off.
yeah.
I know, but if people get to the end of a podcast, imagine, because then, like, you're
Yeah,
actually seeing who are the real OG podcast listeners, and they
that's so true.
deserve, a discount, or it's just, like,
Yeah.
secretly put into ours, like, "Thank you so much for listening,
Mhm.
podcast 50% off," and then we just end it and see if they actually picked up on it. So, the listening, Aaron, the clue is Hishkins. One of my favorite parts of the exam, I listening to hear, "Oh, Yain, a Gaeilgeoir Erin," and all this lovely Donegal Irish and all these people from different places. You come out of the shops with me. What where do you even start with this kind of thing? I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, we used to do every week, I think, we've had a specific day we do, listenings,
Okay,
and
lovely.
we had a day where we had 2 Irish classes, and I think both of them we spent just listening to Lewis Ishkins, which was they're painful, and they take a while, so
Yeah, they're
doing them at
quite
home
long.
is sometimes yeah, doing them at home is sometimes, like, is it's hard to get yourself to sit down and, like, put your headphones in and listen to that, but I'm interested to see what you'd advise, like, the best way to study for that. But for me, that's the only way, and the best way is just to listen to them and do them,
Yeah.
especially at home when you're kind of really forced to kind of focus. Because in school, I don't know, there's a different focus at home, and it's just like, and you can kind of take your time and you can pause something if you don't, and then you can actually break them down more and like listen to them again and again. And if there's certain things you just can't understand or certain accents, dialects you don't really get, but yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on the whole world of Gluaishkins?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's good to note that your listening is worth 10% of your overall grade. So it's 60 marks overall that you can get for
Mhm.
the listening. It's the same listening for higher and ordinary level. So obviously the questions for higher are a little bit more challenging, but it's the same tape that you're going to be listening to. And like, I mean, your listening comprehension is the most important thing anyway. So I think that's just all good to have in mind. Um, yeah, honestly, there's no other way around like studying for the listening than listening. So obviously, yeah, I know, shocker, but like, yeah, it's important to, if you practice them in school, great, but like, yeah, definitely do some in your own time.
Mhm.
Um, like I think the more and more you practice them, you're gonna get into a flow of like how you're supposed to answer them. Um, like the same sort of questions repeat themselves all the time in the listenings. Like, so things like, I think it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with things like dates, phone numbers, place names, because these things are asked all the time. Like, it'll be like, oh, like, what's the phone number you can contact for this? And this is literally just like being aware of your numbers and stuff like that. Or like, what
Yeah.
date does this have to be in by? Like, there's the same sort of layout all the time for the listening. So like there'd be things like announcements for like, I don't know, a job interview, or like a job opening, sorry. Or like
Mhm.
and then there's just kind of like pieces of news. Like if you practice them, you will notice it's the same sort of questions that come up time and time again. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. Um
Mhm.
so learn those phrases really well. And then I think as well it's a good idea that when you're doing the listening papers or whatever the case may be, that you highlight the keywords in the question to keep you focused. So if it's saying like
Yeah.
how many, or like like highlight the question words to keep your focus on that. You only hear the tape twice, so it's really important to kind of, try listen out for the answer the first time, and then like write something down, and then just kind of be able to like go back and correct it, because like you have to be really really focused for the listening. So yeah, highlight whatever you can. Also really important to make sure you give the correct amount of information, and to give exactly what is being required of you. So
Mhm.
as well as highlighting like the question words, highlight if they give you a sort of quantity. So they might be like um give two traits that would be required for somebody who would be accepted to this job. So if you give like three things, you're not going to get marks for that, or you'll lose marks.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to be aware of like little things like that. That's kind of the main things for the listening. I also think as well, like, nothing you do for Irish is like in a vacuum, I guess. Like, I mean, if
Yeah.
you listen to things like podcasts in Irish, there's so many of them out there. Watch TG Cahir,
Yeah.
like listen to anything in Irish. Like all of these things will really, really build up your understanding as well. Like if you can kind of broaden the sort of stuff you listen to, like I mean, like you were saying about like the Donegal Irish and things like that. Like if you can listen to things like if you can listen to different dialects and really
Yeah.
train your ear to become accustomed to things like that, and like things to look out for. There's certain kind of like little I don't know, like inflections or little details that like somebody,
Mhm.
who has kind of Ulster Irish might pronounce differently to somebody who has Connacht Irish. And it's really like, it's hard if you're only used to hearing one type of Irish, or like, whatever sort of Irish that your teacher may have spoken to you. I mean, your teacher might have not, like they mightn't have like a really strong dialect or whatever. So it might be hard if that's the only thing that you're used to hearing, to then have to
Mhm.
adapt to pick up information from the listings and everything. So it's you really just kind of the more independent sort of study that you can do in this case, like listening to literally as much as you can, that will
Mhm.
really, really stand to you kind of above anything else you can do. So yeah, I would say just listening in general, and then practicing the exams over and over again is kind of the most important thing that you can do when it comes to the listening.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So just as you said, listening is listening, and that's the best way to practice it. Is just get surrounding yourself with Irish and talking to people and listening to TG Car and finding things online. But I guess
Yep.
we touched on Lev Hishkins briefly. We didn't really. We mentioned we talked about them. We didn't. In like a bite-sized. Because we talked about the answers are like it's an interesting one because it's the same with English. Like the answers are in are in the flipping thing that you're reading. So
Yep.
it's like it's again. It's like being able to understand the question, being able to find linking that to the right part, and
Hmm.
being able to do that. Do you have any? Because I know that we were always told not to try and overcomplicate it and try and reword things in your own words. I think that's what we were told anyway.
Hmm. Yep.
Just try and take it straight out, so there's no like you're not trying to set yourself up for failure by trying to reword it
Exactly.
and then doing that wrongly. Is
Hmm.
that what you kind of recommend?
Yeah, 100%. So the Leave Hishkinty, I think, are worth 50 marks each, so that's 100 marks overall.
Yeah, because there's a lot.
Um, Yeah, and, like you said, you're literally just taking bits out of a paragraph and regurgitating
Hmm.
them. That's all you have to do.
It's your understanding, really. Yeah.
So it's exactly, it's the understanding that trips people up. I mean, again, it's similar to the listening. Like you have to just kind of be really aware of what you're looking out for. So highlighting is a big thing that can really help. I mean, it seems like such a stupid tip, but as in like when you have this big block of text in front of you, it's a really good idea to be able to um suss out exactly what you're looking for, and to just kind of have your eye like focused on. Like a lot of the time, the words in the question like will be in the text as well. So
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of paraphrasing, and even if there is, like, you'll have a good enough idea of what's been talked about. So definitely like highlight the answers. Like I used to, when I would do the Leaving I would literally just, I'd highlight the questions and then I'd find the answer in the text and just highlight that and then come back to it and write it all down at the end. Now that was just me because I don't know, that was what worked for me. But I find that that really helps focus in on things. Building up your general like um vocabulary can really help because again they can be about like they tend to be about really topical things, so things that are
Mhm.
in the news or whatever which you mightn't just know the Irish words for. So just kind of keep on top of your vocab and that'll really stand to you for the day fishkinty. The first, or well, yeah, like you were saying, they don't ask you to, like, you're not expected to rephrase things in the comprehensions.
Mhm.
Like literally once you have the right, you know, what's being asked of you, literally just rewrite it out again in the question. The first 5 questions, that's all that you're asked to do. Then the question 6 is the one that scares a lot of people of the
Yeah.
comprehensions. So part A, you're asked for, it's a grammar question. So you're asked to pick out certain grammar terms from the text and write them out. So they might say to you like, find an example of the Tishel Gnidoch in this
Mhm.
text, and then you have to go and pick out an example and write it down. There are certain ways to identify more complicated grammar terms like that. So like for the Tishel Gnidoch, a lot of the time, if it's like feminine, it'll have na in between the two words rather than on. Um, you know, but that's stuff that you kind of pick up on like with practice. Like I'm not gonna like give a grammar lesson here in the podcast. This is, it all comes down to like practicing your grammar because it carries over to so many different parts of the text.
Yeah.
But I think it's also worth noting that like you get 3 marks for this question. So it's marked 2 and 1. So even if you only answer one, like you're asked for 2 grammar terms, but even if you only put one down, like you can still get 2 marks. So like, or if you only get one right. So put something down. Don't leave them blank. If you don't know, guess, because there's a chance that you could be
Mhm.
right. Then the second part of question 6, part B, is another one that people are really scared by. So this question is worth 12 marks overall, and you literally, most of the time it'll just ask you like, oh, like, I don't know, like it'll usually ask you for like 2 reasons for something or 2 like I know there's been questions before where it's been like, oh, like talk about like 2 traits that you think this person displays and why. So you can literally, in the
Uh-huh.
American scheme, how it is just, it's like first point, expansion, and that's all you need. Like if you literally can just write down, like, I don't know, if you think someone is like funny, you just write down Ceapan go bhfuil an duine seo granmhair mar, and then like expand on it for a few lines. That's your
Yeah.
basis of your marks. Like it's not overly complicated, and you can literally write anything down once you have something to back it up. Like they're not going to be like, I disagree with that. Like no. So don't be put off by it. And then there's other things. I mean, like there's so many different things that can be asked for that question, but like, you know, it's a lot to do with your opinion, and if you have some sort of answer for it, like they can fall to you. And the marking scheme is very kind of basic and very broad. So yeah, like that's, I think it's 12 marks each question. So
Mhm.
that's 24 marks in total that you can gain just from answering it. I know so many people are guilty of leaving it blank. I know it's kind of scary, but just give it a go. Like
Yeah.
don't leave that part of it blank because that's such a big chunk of the marks.
Pretty sure I remember answering that question almost terribly every time we did mock papers and stuff. So I completely feel everybody's pain if they're nervous about that. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot of things there. Almost everything. Basically, understand, guys, what the exam breakdown is, and learn
Hmm.
that, study that, and that's a great way to get ahead and to structure your study and your learning for the year ahead. Like you've got a lot of time. Um, a lot of time to do a lot of really good work. And I know
Exactly.
Erin said her level of Irish before she kind of went into fifth and sixth year wasn't what you
No.
thought was particularly high, but you were able to like get it to a really high standard in that time. So a lot of learning can be done.
Yeah. So if you're
I
like in
guess
fifth
is.
year now and you're not feeling particularly confident, like things can change if you,
Hmm.
you know, like don't. don't have in your head like, "Oh, I'm really bad at Irish, so I can just never get better," or like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna do bad in the exam and that's that." Like, don't limit yourself, don't,
Yeah. Restrict or kind of, yeah,
yeah,
hold
yeah,
yourself back. Yeah.
exactly, because I mean, like I said, there's so many things here that, like, they all overlap, like, everything in the subject really, it does overlap. Once you have, like, a good foundation with, like, keywords, grammar, like, it's practice. It's like anything, and I mean, languages are all about like, the oral is such a big part for a reason because the spoken element of a language can help with every part of it, and it's just practice. It's just becoming more comfortable with it. So, yeah, like, you have so much time to improve, and
And it's
it's
possible. It's doable.
yeah,
It's
it
finding a
is, and
passion in it, and the part of it you love, and that is kind of will
mhm,
make you want to work harder at it. I know you said that was something for you that really
yeah.
helped you. Um,
100%. But I think, yeah, when it comes to the exam, like, it's such a big help to know exactly, what you need to focus more of your time on, like how things are broken down, because it can seem super daunting. I mean, there's so many parts of the Irish exam, like more than like most other subjects. Like, there's so many different things you have to do, and you have to,
mhm.
um, study and get comfortable with. But if you really break it down and kind of look at what way marks are allocated and things like that, like, it does become a lot easier to tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I think that's kind of everything we wanted to touch on in this episode. We thank you all so much for listening. As Erin mentioned beautifully earlier, podcast 10.
Podcast 10, really do consider giving Irish Boost a go if you feel like you need help with your Irish,
Absolutely.
because it has honestly like everything that you'd need on there, and it's such a great and really helpful resource, especially for people who are in fifth year now who are looking for
Yeah.
help with their study text and everything. Like, it has
Yeah.
everything you could possibly need.
Absolutely.
So
A great place to start if you're coming out today and you're kind of going, okay, I've kind of been inspired by this, or I kind of feel like I know what I need to do, but I'm still kind of a bit overwhelmed as where to start. Maybe that could be a good thing to
mhm.
looking into to help you get into
Yeah,
that, and yeah, it
100%.
can really help you kick off with it. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for listening, and podcast 10. Get it going. And if you enjoyed this, please recommend it to a friend and come back and listen to other episodes. And we've got a lot more fun ones coming up in the future. So
Mhm.
thank you and goodbye.
Bye, slán.